Vanessa Cole grabbed the janitor's broom and threw it across the ballroom floor. "Dance for us!" 300 people turned to stare. Marcus Johnson, a black man in a gray uniform, stood frozen as the broom clattered against marble. The director's daughter stepped closer, champagne in hand, smile sharp as a blade. "You heard me. Dance. Entertain us. That's what you people do, right?" She didn't know that 15 years ago this janitor had won the national dance championship. She didn't know his wife had died in his arms. She didn't know he was raising a daughter alone. Tonight she would learn. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments. Let's see how far this story travels. The broom slid across the marble and stopped at the foot of the stage. Marcus didn't move. Didn't breathe. 300 faces stared at him, some amused, some uncomfortable, most just waiting to see what would happen next. Vanessa Cole tilted her head, blonde hair catching the chandelier light. "What's wrong?" "Cat got your tongue." "Pick up my broom." The words came out before Marcus could stop them. Low, quiet, but everyone heard. Vanessa's smile flickered. "Excuse me. I said pick up my broom. You threw it, you pick it up." Laughter died in throats. The orchestra stopped playing. Somewhere in the crowd, a glass clinked against a table. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "Do you know who I am? Do you know who you're talking to? A janitor." She spat the word like poison. "A nobody. A man who cleans toilets for a living." Marcus felt the old fire rise in his chest. The fire he'd buried 3 years ago, the night Angela stopped breathing. The fire he'd promised himself he'd never let out again. Pick up the broom. Vanessa didn't pick up the broom. Instead, she laughed, a sharp, brittle sound that echoed off the marble walls. She turned to her friends, a cluster of young executives in designer suits. "Can you believe this? The help is giving me orders?" A man with slicked back hair snorted. "Maybe someone should remind him where he belongs." "Maybe someone should." Vanessa drained her champagne and handed the empty glass to a passing waiter without looking. "You know what? I changed my mind. I don't want you to dance for us." She stepped closer to Marcus. Close enough that he could smell her perfume, something expensive, something that cost more than his weekly paycheck. "I want you to dance with me." The crowd murmured. "A challenge," Vanessa announced loud enough for everyone to hear. "The janitor versus the director's daughter, right here, right now. Unless—" She paused, letting the word hang. "You're too scared." Marcus should have walked away. He knew it. Every instinct screamed at him to pick up his broom, disappear into the shadows, and forget this ever happened. He had a daughter at home, bills to pay, a job he couldn't afford to lose. But then he saw it. Behind Vanessa's arrogance, behind the cruel smile and the cutting words, fear. Just a flicker. Just a moment. But it was there. She was terrified. Not of him. Of something else. Something deeper. The kind of fear that makes people lash out at strangers, tear down anyone who reminds them of their own emptiness. Marcus had seen that fear before, in the mirror, every night after Angela died. "Why?" he asked quietly. Vanessa blinked. "Why what? Why do you need this? Why do you need to humiliate a man you don't know in front of people you don't care about for a moment? You won't remember tomorrow." The question hit her like a slap. For 1 second, just one, her mask cracked. Something raw flickered across her face. Pain, loneliness, the desperate need to matter. Then it was gone. "Because I can," she said coldly. "Because you're nothing, and I'm everything. And tonight, everyone in this room is going to watch you prove it." Marcus thought about his daughter. Maya, 8 years old, sleeping right now in her small bed with the purple nightlight clutching the stuffed elephant her mother had given her the week before she died. This morning, Maya had called him, her small voice crackling through his phone during his break. "Daddy, will you dance with me when you come home, like you used to dance with Mommy?" He'd said maybe. He'd said we'll see. He'd said everything except the truth. The truth was that Marcus hadn't danced in 3 years. Not since the funeral. Not since he'd packed away the trophies and medals and photographs. Not since he'd decided that the man who danced, the man who won championships, who spun his wife across stages, who felt music in his bones, was dead. That man was buried next to Angela. But now standing in this ballroom facing a woman who saw him as nothing more than dirt on her shoes, Marcus felt something stir. Something that had been sleeping for 3 long years. Battle them. All right. The word came out calm, steady. Vanessa's eyes widened. What? I said all right. Marcus pulled off his gray work jacket and dropped it on a nearby chair. Underneath he wore a simple white shirt, sleeves rolled to the elbows. You want to dance? Let's dance. The crowd exploded in whispers. He accepted. Is he serious? This is going to be embarrassing. Vanessa recovered quickly, but Marcus caught at the flash of uncertainty in her eyes. She hadn't expected him to say yes. Fine. She kicked off her heels and handed them to a friend. DJ something with a beat. Let's see what the janitors got. The music started. A pulsing Latin rhythm that filled the ballroom like a heartbeat. Vanessa moved first. Her body flowed with practiced precision. Hips, swaying arms, extending feet, tracing patterns on the marble. She was good. Years of expensive lessons showed in every movement. The crowd clapped, encouraged her, cheered. Marcus stood still. Bato. What's the matter? Vanessa called over the music spinning past him. Frozen. He didn't answer. I knew it. She laughed, playing to the crowd. All talk, no action. Just another. Marcus moved, not walked, not stepped, moved. His body exploded into motion like a coiled spring releasing. His feet hit the floor in rapid-fire patterns, tap, slide, spin, stop. His arms sliced through the air with precision that made Vanessa stumble back. The crowd went silent. He could feel it now. The music wasn't just sound. It was blood. It was breath. It was the pulse of something he'd tried to kill, but couldn't. His shoulders rolled. His hips shifted. His feet painted stories on the marble floor. 15 years ago, he'd done this in front of 20,000 people. He and Angela, moving as one body, one soul. They'd won gold that night. She'd cried in his arms and whispered, "We did it, baby. We really did it." Now he was alone. But the rhythm remembered. His body remembered. And for the first time in 3 years, Marcus Johnson was alive. Vanessa stopped dancing. She stood in the middle of the floor, chest heaving, watching this janitor, this nobody, command the room like he owned it. Every move he made was sharper, smoother, more powerful than anything she'd ever seen. The crowd wasn't clapping for her anymore. How? Her voice cracked. How are you? Marcus didn't answer. He spun past her close enough that she felt the wind of his movement. His eyes were closed, his face calm, his body speaking a language she couldn't understand. The music built toward its climax. Marcus launched into a sequence he hadn't performed since Chicago, a combination of footwork and spins that had taken him 2 years to perfect. His shoes slapped the marble like thunder. His body bent and twisted in ways that seemed impossible. The crowd erupted, cheering, screaming. Phones raised everywhere, recording the moment. And then Marcus stopped, dead center of the floor, breathing hard, sweat on his brow. He opened his eyes and looked directly at Vanessa. Then he extended his hand. Heck, the room held its breath. Vanessa stared at his hand, the hand that pushed brooms, that mopped floors, that cleaned toilets. The hand of a man she'd called nobody. What are you doing? She whispered. Offering you a choice. A choice. Take my hand. Dance with me. Not against me, with me. His voice was steady, but his eyes held something she couldn't read. Or walk away. Prove to everyone here that you're exactly who they think you are. Her heart pounded. Behind her, she could feel the crowd watching, could feel her father's eyes burning into her back, could hear the whispers starting. She won't do it. She's scared. Look at her face. Vanessa's hands trembled. She thought about her father, about his expectations, about the way he looked at her when she disappointed him, which was always. She thought about her so-called friends who would laugh about this tomorrow, regardless of what she did. She thought about how empty she'd felt walking into this gala, how she'd seen the janitor in the corner and felt something twist in her gut, envy maybe, for a man who seemed at peace with his invisible life. She'd wanted to destroy that peace, wanted to make him feel as small as she felt. And now he was offering her his hand. Vanessa. Her father's voice cut through the noise. Richard Cole stood at the edge of the crowd, face rigid. His eyes said everything his mouth didn't. Don't you dare. She looked at him, then at Marcus. The janitor's hand was still extended, patient, waiting. I'm sorry, Vanessa whispered. Marcus tilted his head. For what? For the broom, for the things I said, for... She swallowed hard. For being exactly who everyone thinks I am. Her fingers touched his palm. The crowd gasped. Marcus's hand closed around hers, warm, firm, steady. He pulled her gently toward him. Then let's show them who you could be. They danced, not against each other, together. Marcus led his body, guiding hers through movements she'd never learned in her expensive studios. This wasn't performance. This was conversation. His rhythm asking questions. Her body learning to answer. She stumbled. He caught her. She hesitated. He waited. She fell into the wrong beat. He adjusted, never once making her feel small. The music swelled. Vanessa felt something crack open in her chest, something she'd kept locked away for years. Tears burned her eyes. She didn't know why. When the song ended, the applause was deafening. But Marcus didn't bow. He didn't play to the crowd. He simply released her hand, stepped back, and met her eyes. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For taking my hand. The aftermath was chaos. Phones flashed. People pressed forward, wanting to shake Marcus's hand, wanting to know who he was. Questions flew from every direction. Where did you learn to dance like that? Are you a professional? What's your name? But through the crowd, Marcus saw only one face. Richard Cole pushed through the bodies until he stood inches away. His jaw was tight. His eyes were cold. My office. 7 a.m. tomorrow. Don't be late. He turned and walked away, pulling Vanessa behind him. She looked back once, her expression unreadable, before disappearing into the crowd. Marcus stood alone in the chaos, wondering if he'd just saved his soul or destroyed his life. At midnight, Marcus drove home. The streets were empty. His hands still trembled on the steering wheel, not from fear, but from something else. Something he'd forgotten he could feel. His phone buzzed. A text from his mother. Maya woke up asking for you. She's back asleep now. Everything okay? He typed back. Everything's okay. Tell her Daddy loves her. Tell her I'll dance with her tomorrow. He meant it this time. The house was quiet when he arrived. His mother had left a plate of food in the fridge. He didn't touch it. Instead, he walked to Maya's room and stood in the doorway. She was sleeping, nightlight glowing purple, stuffed elephant tucked under her arm, her small chest rising and falling. Marcus knelt beside her bed, took her hand so tiny in his. I danced tonight, baby, he whispered. For the first time in 3 years, I danced. Maya stirred, but didn't wake. Your mama would have been proud. She always said I'd find my way back. She always believed that. He pressed his lips to his daughter's forehead. I don't know what happens tomorrow. I might lose my job. I might lose everything. But tonight, his voice broke. Tonight, I remembered who I am, and I'm not going to forget again. I promise. He stayed there for a long time, holding his daughter's hand in the purple light. Tomorrow would bring consequences. Richard Cole's cold eyes. Vanessa's uncertain future. A storm he couldn't predict. But tonight, Marcus Johnson was no longer invisible. Tonight, he was a man who danced. And that was worth everything. Marcus didn't sleep that night. He sat at the kitchen table until 3 a.m., staring at the same spot on the wall where Angela's photograph used to hang. He'd taken it down 6 months after she died, because looking at her smile made it hard to breathe. Now the wall was blank, but he could still see her there. Still hear her voice. "You're going to be okay, baby. You always land on your feet." But this time felt different. This time, he'd poked a bear. And the bear owned the building where he worked. At 5 a.m., his mother shuffled into the kitchen. Dorothy Johnson was 68 years old, with gray hair she refused to dye and hands that had worked 3 jobs to put Marcus through school. She took one look at her son and knew. "You didn't sleep." Couldn't. She poured herself coffee and sat across from him. "Maya told me something interesting this morning. Said she dreamed you were dancing on a big stage with lots of people watching." Marcus looked up. "She said that?" Said you were smiling. Said Mommy was there too, clapping in the front row." His throat tightened. "Mama, I'm not finished." Dorothy set down her cup. That child hasn't dreamed about her mother smiling in 2 years. Every dream has been Angela leaving, Angela disappearing, Angela gone. But last night she dreamed her mother was happy. She reached across the table and took her son's hand. "Whatever you did, whatever happened at that gala, it mattered. Don't let anyone tell you different." Marcus squeezed her hand, but said nothing. At 6:15, he showered, dressed in his cleanest clothes, and drove to the Hartwell building. The security guard Ray looked at him different this morning. Not the usual half-nod of barely acknowledged existence. This time, Ray actually stood up. "Hey, Marcus, saw the video." Marcus stopped. "What video?" Ray pulled out his phone and turned it toward him. The screen showed a shaky recording of the ballroom of Marcus dancing, of the crowd going wild. The video had over 200,000 views. "You're famous, man." Marcus stared at the numbers. 200,000 people had watched him dance. 200,000 strangers had seen him take Vanessa Cole's hand and prove that he was more than a uniform. "That's something," he managed. "That's everything." Ray grinned. "Whatever happens up there, know that a lot of people are rooting for you, me included." Marcus nodded and walked toward the elevator. The ride to the executive floor felt longer than usual. Richard Cole's office was on the top floor corner suite with a view of the entire city. Marcus had cleaned this office hundreds of times, vacuumed the carpet, emptied the trash, polished the desk. He knew every inch of it, but he'd never sat across from the man who owned it. The secretary barely looked at him. "He's waiting. Go in." Marcus pushed open the heavy oak door. Richard Cole stood by the window, hands clasped behind his back. He didn't turn around when Marcus entered. "Close the door." Marcus closed it. "Sit." Marcus sat in the leather chair facing the desk. The chair was designed to make visitors feel small. It worked. For a long moment, neither man spoke. The silence stretched like a wire about to snap. Finally, Richard turned. His face was calm, but his eyes were anything but. "Do you know how much that gala cost to organize?" "No, sir." $350,000. "Do you know how many investors were in that room?" "No, sir." 47. 47 people who control billions of dollars in capital. People who decide the fate of companies, of jobs, of lives. Richard walked slowly toward his desk but didn't sit. He stood over Marcus like a judge about to deliver a sentence. "And in front of all 47 of them, you humiliated my daughter." "With respect, sir, your daughter challenged me." "And you should have declined." "She threw my broom across the floor, called me the help, asked me to dance for her like some kind of performing animal." "So what?" Richard's voice rose. You think you're the first person to be disrespected. You think the world is supposed to be fair. You're a janitor, Marcus. You clean floors. You empty trash. You exist in the background. That's your job. That's your place. Marcus felt the old fire flicker in his chest. He pushed it down. I know my job, sir. I've done it well for 6 years. And in one night you destroyed everything. I danced. That's all I did. Richard slammed his hand on the desk. You made my daughter look like a fool. The video has 500,000 views now. 500,000 people watching Vanessa Cole get shown up by the janitor. Do you have any idea what that does to our family's reputation? I offered her my hand. I danced with her, not against her. You think that matters? Richard laughed bitterly. The headlines this morning don't say janitor and heiress danced together. They say janitor school's spoiled heiress at father's gala. They're calling her entitled, arrogant, cruel, and they're calling you a hero. Marcus said nothing. Richard leaned closer. I don't need heroes in my building. I need workers who know their place. Workers who don't embarrass the people who sign their paychecks. I understand, sir. Why? Do you? Because if you did, you would have kept your head down and let my daughter have her moment. You would have shuffled your feet, played the part, and gone back to your broom. Instead, you chose pride. You chose ego. And now... He straightened, smoothing his tie. Now you're fired. The word landed like a punch. Marcus had expected it, had braced for it all night. But hearing it spoken aloud still knocked the wind out of him. I'm giving you 2 weeks severance. Richard continued, his voice cold and businesslike. That's more than you deserve. You'll clean out your locker by end of day. Security will escort you out. Don't speak to any employees on your way. Don't speak to the press. And don't ever set foot in this building again. Marcus stood slowly. His legs felt numb. Is that all, sir? Richard studied him for a long moment. Something flickered across his face. Not regret, not sympathy, but something close to curiosity. You really were good. The dancing. I've never seen anything like it. Thank you. It doesn't change anything. I know. Marcus turned toward the door. One more thing. He stopped. Stay away from my daughter. Whatever you think happened between you two on that dance floor, forget it. She's not your concern. She never was. She never will be. Marcus opened the door. Mr. Cole. Richard raised an eyebrow. I feel sorry for her, growing up with a father who thinks people exist to know their place. He met Richard's eyes. I hope she finds a way out. He walked through the door and didn't look back. The elevator ride down felt even longer. Marcus's hands were shaking by the time he reached the basement. Patterson was waiting by the locker's, arms crossed, face unreadable. I heard. News travels fast. It's all over the building. Patterson sighed. I'm sorry, Marcus. For what it's worth, I think he's wrong. What you did last night, that took guts. Guts don't pay rent. No, they don't. Patterson reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. But maybe this helps. I made some calls this morning. There's a community center on the east side, St. Mary's. They've been looking for someone to teach dance classes to neighborhood kids. Doesn't pay much, but it's something. Marcus took the paper. An address. A phone number. A name, Father Thomas. Why would you do this for me? Patterson shrugged. Because I've been watching you for 6 years. You're the only janitor who ever treated this job like it mattered. You deserved better than this place. Now maybe you'll find it. Marcus nodded, throat too tight to speak. He cleaned out his locker, a photo of Maya, a spare shirt, his lunchbox, and walked toward the service exit for the last time. Ray was waiting outside. I'll walk you out. Make sure nobody bothers you. You don't have to do that. I know. Ray fell into step beside him. But I want to. My grandfather was a janitor. Cleaned schools for 40 years. Never got a thank you, never got a raise, Never got anything except sore knees and a pension that barely covered his medicine. He died thinking he didn't matter. They stopped at the parking lot. You proved last night that he was wrong. That all of us doing jobs nobody sees we matter. We're more than our uniforms. Marcus shook his hand. Thank you, Ray. Don't thank me, just don't disappear. Whatever you do next, make sure people see you. Marcus drove home with the windows down. The cold air helped him think. He'd lost his job. He had maybe 3 months of savings less if something unexpected came up. Maya needed new shoes. His mother's medication was due for refill. The car was making a sound he couldn't afford to investigate. But underneath the fear, underneath the uncertainty, there was something else. Freedom. For 6 years he'd made himself small, kept his head down, accepted invisibility as the price of survival. And what had it gotten him? Fired anyway. Thrown out by a man who saw him as less than furniture. Angela's voice echoed in his mind. You can't hide forever, baby. Sooner or later you have to step back into the light. He'd stepped into the light last night. And even though it had cost him everything, he couldn't regret it. When he got home, Maya was awake. She ran to him the moment he walked through the door, wrapping her arms around his waist. Daddy, Grandma showed me the video. You were dancing like you used to dance with Mommy. He knelt down to meet her eyes. You saw that. Everyone saw it. Grandma said it's famous. Maya's face was glowing. Will you teach me? Will you teach me to dance like that? He pulled her into his arms and held her tight, felt her small heart beating against his chest, remembered all the reasons he had to keep going. Yeah, baby, I'll teach you. That afternoon, Marcus called the number Patterson had given him. A gruff voice answered on the third ring. St. Mary's Community Center, Father Thomas speaking. Father, my name is Marcus Johnson. I was told you're looking for a dance instructor. A pause. Then, you're the janitor from the video. Word gets around. Son, that video has 2 million views now. You're not just getting around, you're everywhere. Father Thomas chuckled. I've been praying for someone to help these kids. Never thought the answer would come from a viral video of a man dancing at some rich folks' party. I'm not sure I'm the answer to anyone's prayers. That's not for you to decide. Can you come by tomorrow? Meet the kids. See if it feels right. Marcus looked at Maya, who was watching him with wide eyes. I'll be there. He hung up and knelt beside his daughter again. How would you feel about Daddy teaching some other kids to dance? Maya's face lit up. Can I come too? I think that can be arranged. That night, for the first time in 3 years, Marcus slept without dreaming of Angela's hospital room. Instead, he dreamed of music, of movement, of a room full of children learning to find rhythm in their bones. Across town, Vanessa Cole was not sleeping at all. She sat in her apartment, a penthouse her father paid for, decorated by a designer she'd never met, and stared at her phone. The video had been shared to every social media platform. Her face was everywhere. Her words were being quoted, analyzed, mocked. That's what you people do, right? She'd actually said that. On camera. To a man she didn't know, a man who turned out to be more talented than anyone she'd ever met. Her phone buzzed. Another text from her friend Caroline. Girl, you need to go dark. Delete everything. This will blow over. Vanessa didn't respond. She scrolled through the comments instead, each one a fresh wound. Imagine being that entitled and that untalented. The janitor ate her up, and she deserved every second. This is why people hate rich kids. She called him you people. In 2024, the privilege is wild. But the comment that broke her wasn't an insult. It was a question. Does anyone know the janitor's name? He deserves recognition, not her. His name. She didn't know it. She'd challenged him to a dance-off, tried to humiliate him in front of everyone she knew, and she didn't even know his name. Her phone rang. Father. She let it go to voicemail. Couldn't handle his disappointment right now. Couldn't handle his plans for damage control. Couldn't handle being Vanessa Cole, the director's daughter, for one more second. She walked to her closet rows of designer dresses, shelves of shoes that cost more than most people's rent, and felt nothing. Empty, hollow, all this stuff, all this money, all this privilege, and what did she have? Nothing real, nothing earned, nothing that mattered. She thought about the janitor's face when he'd extended his hand. No anger, no revenge, just an offer. Take my hand. Dance with me. Let me show you who you could be. She'd taken it. For one moment, one song, she'd let herself be led by a man who cleaned toilets for a living. And it was the most alive she'd felt in years. Now it was over. He was probably fired. Her father would make sure of it. And she would go back to her empty life, her shallow friends, her perfectly decorated prison. Unless. The thought flickered like a candle in a dark room. Unless she did something, changed something, became someone worth being. She grabbed her keys and walked out the door. The next morning, Marcus arrived at St. Mary's Community Center at 9 a.m. sharp. The building was old, cracked, paint-sagging roof, a front door that squeaked when you opened it. But inside, it was alive. Children ran through the hallways, laughing, shouting, chasing each other with the boundless energy of kids who didn't know yet how hard the world could be. Posters covered the walls, artwork, announcements, photos of community events. A basketball game was happening in the gym. Somewhere nearby, someone was cooking something that smelled like home. Father Thomas met him at the entrance. He was a big man, broad-shouldered, with a gray beard and eyes that had seen too much and forgiven it all anyway. Marcus Johnson, in the flesh. Father Thomas. They shook hands. Come, let me show you what we're working with. They walked through the center, past classrooms and activity rooms, until they reached a large hall at the back. The floor was scuffed. The mirrors cracked, the sound system held together with tape and prayer. This is it, Father Thomas said. Not much to look at. I've seen worse. Have you? The priest smiled. Then maybe you're the right man for this. He gestured toward a group of kids sitting against the wall. A dozen of them, ages ranging from about 6 to maybe 14. They looked up at Marcus with curious eyes. Everyone, this is Mr. Johnson. He's going to teach you how to dance. A boy in the front, maybe 10, with a skeptical expression, crossed his arms. You, the janitor from the video? Marcus nodded. That's me. You got fired. I did. For dancing. For not knowing my place. The boy considered this. That's messed up. Yeah, it is. Another kid, a girl with braids and a fierce look in her eyes, stood up. Can you really dance like that? Or was it just the video? Marcus felt the corner of his mouth twitch. Only one way to find out. He walked to the old stereo in the corner and pressed play. A song crackled through the speakers, something with a beat, something with soul. And Marcus moved. Not as explosively as he had at the gala. This wasn't about proving anything. This was about showing them what was possible. His feet traced patterns on the scuffed floor. His body found rhythms he'd forgotten he knew. His arms told stories without words. When he stopped, the kids were silent. Then the boy in front grinned. Okay, that was tight. Father Thomas laughed. I think you're hired, Mr. Johnson. For the next hour, Marcus worked with the kids. He didn't teach them complicated moves, not yet. He taught them how to listen to music, how to feel the beat in their chest and let it move through their body, how to stop thinking and start trusting. Some kids picked it up fast, others struggled. One boy, quiet and withdrawn, refused to participate at all. He just sat in the corner and watched. After the class, Marcus approached him. Not into dancing, the boy shrugged. Dancing's for girls. You think so? That's what my dad says. Marcus sat down beside him. What's your name? Deshaun. Deshaun, can I tell you something? The boy nodded warily. I used to think the same thing. When I was your age, my friends made fun of any boy who danced, said it wasn't cool, said real men don't move like that. So what changed? I saw a man dance at my church one Sunday. Big guy. Looked like he could play football. But when the music started, he moved like water, like air, like the music was inside him and had to get out. Marcus paused. That man was my father. And that day I realized that dancing wasn't about being a boy or a girl. It was about being free. Deshawn was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Is he still alive?" "Your dad?" "No. He passed when I was 16. "I'm sorry." "Me too." Marcus stood up. "You don't have to dance, Deshawn. But if you ever want to try, I'll be here. No pressure, no judgment, just movement." He walked away, leaving the boy alone with his thoughts. At the end of the day, Father Thomas walked Marcus to the door. "You're good with them. Natural. They're good kids. They are. Most of them come from hard situations. Single parents, poverty, violence. This center is the only safe place some of them have." Father Thomas paused. "What you did last night at that gala, standing up, refusing to be invisible, that's the same thing these kids need to learn. That they matter. That they're more than their circumstances." Marcus nodded. "I'll be back tomorrow." "I know you will." He drove home with the windows down again, but this time, the cold air felt different. It felt like possibility. Maya was waiting at the door when he arrived. "Daddy, how was it? Did you teach them? Did they like you?" He scooped her up and spun her around, her laughter filling the house. "They liked me, baby. And tomorrow, you're coming with me." Her eyes went wide. "Really? Really? We're going to dance together, just like I promised." That night, Marcus sat on the porch after Maya fell asleep. His mother joined him, 2 cups of coffee in hand. "You look different," she said. "Different how?" "Lighter. Like something heavy finally fell off your shoulders." He sipped his coffee. "I think I finally remembered who I am, Mama. After 3 years of trying to forget." Dorothy smiled. "Angela always said you'd find your way back. She knew you better than you knew yourself." "I miss her." "I know, baby. I know." She put her hand on his. "But she's still with you. Every time you dance. Every time you teach those kids. Every time you show Maya what her daddy's made of. Angela's right there." They sat in silence for a while, watching the stars come out one by one. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The money would run out eventually. Richard Cole might find new ways to punish him. The world would keep spinning indifferent to one man's small rebellion. But tonight, Marcus Johnson had a purpose again, and that was enough to keep going. 2 weeks passed, and the video refused to die. Marcus stopped counting views after it hit 5 million. The story had taken on a life of its own, shared, commented on, debated across every platform. Janitor versus heiress became a cultural moment, a symbol of class warfare, of dignity, reclaimed, of everything people wanted to believe was possible. But Marcus didn't care about any of that. He cared about the 12 kids waiting for him every morning at St. Mary's. He cared about Maya's face lighting up when she nailed a new step. He cared about Deshawn, the quiet boy who still sat in the corner, but now tapped his foot when he thought no one was watching. On the 15th day, something changed. Marcus was leading the class through a basic rhythm exercise when the door opened. He assumed it was Father Thomas, maybe a parent picking up early. He didn't turn around. "Keep the beat, everyone. Feel it in your chest. Let your body follow." "Mr. Marcus." One of the girls, Aaliyah, had stopped dancing. Her eyes were fixed on the door. "Someone's here." Marcus turned. Vanessa Cole stood in the doorway. She wasn't dressed like before. No designer gown, no perfect hair, no expensive perfume cloud. She wore jeans, a simple white blouse, sneakers that looked like they'd actually been worn. Her face was bare of makeup, and there were shadows under her eyes. The children stared. A few of them recognized her from the video. That's her, Deshaun whispered from his corner. That's the lady who threw your broom. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. Class take 5. Practice what we learned. I'll be right back. He walked toward Vanessa, each step measured. She didn't move, didn't run, just stood there, hands clasped in front of her like a defendant waiting for sentencing. Outside, Marcus said quietly. She nodded and followed him into the hallway. The door closed behind them. Marcus crossed his arms and waited. Vanessa opened her mouth, closed. It tried again. I know I'm the last person you want to see. You're not wrong. I came to apologize. You could have sent a letter. A letter wouldn't mean anything. She met his eyes and he saw it again, that flicker of something real beneath the surface. I needed to say it to your face. I needed you to see that I mean it. Marcus studied her for a long moment. Say what you came to say. Vanessa took a breath. I've spent the last 2 weeks watching that video, over and over. At first I hated it. Hated how stupid I looked. Hated how everyone was laughing at me. But then I started watching you instead of me. The way you moved. The way you carried yourself. The way you offered me your hand even after everything I'd said. Her voice cracked. I've had everything my whole life. Money, clothes, connections. My father gave me whatever I wanted as long as I performed. As long as I was the perfect daughter, the perfect image, the perfect representation of the Cole family brand. She laughed bitterly. Do you know what that does to a person? Being raised as a performance instead of a child. I don't. It makes you empty. It makes you mean. It makes you hurt other people because you don't know how else to feel anything. Marcus uncrossed his arms. He didn't soften, but he listened. That night at the gala, I saw you in the corner, sweeping, minding your business. And something about you made me angry. You looked peaceful, content, like you didn't need anything from anyone. Vanessa shook her head. I've never felt that way. Not once in my entire life. So I wanted to take it from you. I wanted to make you feel as small as I feel every day. Did it work? No. It made everything worse. You danced like you had something inside you that I'll never have. Something real. And when you offered me your hand, when you danced with me instead of against me, I felt it for just a second. That thing, that realness. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Then it was over, and I went back to being nothing. The hallway was silent except for her breathing. Marcus let the silence stretch. Then he spoke. You got me fired. I know. I have a daughter, 8 years old. I was supporting her with that job. Vanessa flinched like he'd hit her. I know. And I tried. I went to my father. Begged him to give you your job back. He refused. Said it would make him look weak. So what do you want from me? Forgiveness, absolution. You want me to say it's okay, so you can feel better about yourself. No. Her voice was small. I don't deserve forgiveness. I just needed you to know that I see it now. What I did. Who I was. And I hate her. I hate the person I've been. Marcus looked at her. Really looked. Past the expensive clothes she wasn't wearing, past the reputation she was drowning in, past every assumption he'd made about rich people and their spoiled children. He saw a woman his daughter's age who had never been taught how to be human. Hating yourself doesn't fix anything, he said quietly. Trust me. I've tried. Vanessa wiped her eyes. Then what does doing something, being something, finding out who you are when nobody's watching and nobody cares? I don't know who that is. Then figure it out. He turned toward the door. But not here. These kids don't need your guilt. They need consistency. They need someone who shows up because they want to, not because they're trying to wash away sins. He reached for the handle. Wait. He stopped. What if I came back? Not to apologize, not to make myself feel better. What if I came back to help, really help? Marcus turned. Help how? I don't know. Whatever you need. Cleaning, organizing, answering phones. I'm not asking to teach. I know I haven't earned that, but I want to do something. I need to do something. Her voice broke again. Please. I'm drowning in that life. If I go back to it, I'll never get out. He studied her face, looking for the lie, the manipulation, the angle. He'd spent enough years around wealthy people to know how they operated. Everything was a transaction. Everything had a price. But he didn't see that in Vanessa's eyes. He saw desperation. The real kind. The kind he'd felt 3 years ago standing at Angela's grave, begging God for a reason to keep going. You show up late, you're gone. You bring drama, you're gone. You treat any of these kids like they're less than you, you're gone. Vanessa nodded quickly. I understand. I don't trust you. I know. But everyone deserves a chance to change. He opened the door. Monday, 7 a.m. Don't be late. She let out a breath she'd been holding for what seemed like hours. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You haven't seen how hard these kids work. He walked back into the hall. The children were still practicing their small bodies, finding rhythms, their faces concentrated with effort. Maya was helping one of the younger kids, guiding her arms with gentle patience. Vanessa watched from the doorway. Something shifted in her expression, not the polished mask she usually wore, but something softer. Something almost like hope. Monday came faster than Vanessa expected. She arrived at 6:45, 15 minutes early. She'd barely slept, terrified of oversleeping, of giving Marcus any reason to send her away. She sat in her car and watched the neighborhood wake up, people heading to work, kids walking to school, a normalcy she'd never known. At 6:55, she walked inside. Father Thomas met her at the entrance. He didn't smile, didn't frown. Just looked at her with eyes that had seen everything. You're the girl from the video. Yes, Father. Marcus told me you wanted to help. I do. He studied her for a long moment. I've been a priest for 40 years. I've seen people come here with all kinds of intentions. Some want to help. Some want to feel good about themselves. Some want a photo opportunity. He paused. Which one are you? I don't know yet, Vanessa admitted. But I want to find out. Father Thomas's expression softened slightly. Honest answer. That's rare. He handed her a broom. Start in the main hall. The kids get here at 8. She took the broom without hesitation. The irony wasn't lost on her. The woman who had thrown a janitor's broom across a ballroom floor was now holding one herself. She almost laughed at the poetry of it. For the next hour, Vanessa cleaned. She swept floors. She wiped down tables. She straightened chairs. Simple work. Physical work. The kind of work she'd spent her whole life paying other people to do. Her arms ached. Her back hurt. Sweat formed on her brow. And for the first time in years, she felt useful. At 8, the children arrived. They flowed in like a noisy river, shouting, laughing, pushing each other with the boundless energy of youth. When they saw Vanessa, they stopped. That's the broom lady, one of them whispered. What's she doing here? Is Mr. Marcus okay? Marcus walked in behind them. He saw Vanessa with the broom and gave a small nod, nothing more. Everyone line up. We've got work to do. The class began. Vanessa stayed in the background, finishing her cleaning, watching Marcus work. He was a different person here than he'd been at the gala. Looser, lighter. He joked with the kids, pushed them when they needed pushing, praised them when they earned it. Maya danced in the front row, her face beaming with pride. She was good naturally, rhythmic, fearless in her movements. Every few minutes, she'd look back at her father for approval. Every time he'd smile and nod. Vanessa felt her chest tighten. She couldn't remember her father ever looking at her that way. After class, the kids scattered for snacks. Marcus approached Vanessa. You stayed. You told me to. I told you to show up. I didn't tell you to clean for 3 hours without complaint. She shrugged. leaning the broom against the wall. First time I've done manual labor in my life. My trainer would be horrified. How do you feel? Vanessa considered the question. Sore. Tired. She paused. Alive. Marcus studied her. Same time tomorrow. I'll be here. The days turned into weeks. Vanessa became a fixture at St. Mary's. She arrived early every morning, cleaned without being asked. Helped organize supplies, answered phones when Father Thomas was busy. The kids stopped calling her Broom Lady and started calling her Miss Vanessa. Some of them even smiled when they saw her. She still didn't teach. Didn't join the dance classes. Just worked in the background, learning what it meant to be useful without being the center of attention. It was the hardest thing she'd ever done. Her father called daily, demanding to know where she was, why she'd moved out of the penthouse, why she wasn't answering her friends' messages. She kept the conversations short. I'm fine, Daddy. Fine. You've disappeared. Caroline says she hasn't heard from you in 3 weeks. The charity board is asking why you missed the last 2 meetings. I'm busy. Busy with what? Whatever you're doing, stop. Come home. This isn't who you are. Maybe that's the point. She hung up before he could respond. One evening after the kids had gone home, Vanessa sat alone in the empty hall. The mirrors reflected her tired face, her messy hair, her clothes spotted with dust. She barely recognized herself. You're still here. She turned. Marcus stood in the doorway, Maya beside him. I was just leaving. Maya wants to show you something. The little girl stepped forward, suddenly shy. I made up a dance. Daddy helped. Vanessa glanced at Marcus, uncertain. He nodded. Show me. Maya walked to the center of the floor. Marcus pulled out his phone and played a song, something soft, something gentle. Maya began to move. She wasn't technically perfect. Her arms sometimes went the wrong way, her timing occasionally slipped. But she danced with joy, with freedom, with the pure expression of a child who had never been taught to perform for approval. When she finished, she looked at Vanessa with hopeful eyes. Did you like it? Vanessa's throat was tight. I loved it. Maya beamed. Daddy said you used to be sad. He said you're learning not to be sad anymore. Vanessa looked at Marcus. He said that. Something like that. Maya ran to her father and took his hand. Can Miss Vanessa come to dinner? Please, I want to show her my room and my elephant and my pictures of Mommy. Marcus hesitated. Vanessa saw the conflict in his eyes, the protective instinct, the lingering distrust, the desire to keep his world separate from everything that had hurt him. It's okay, Vanessa said quickly. I don't want to intrude. Please, Daddy. She's nice now. She cleaned the bathroom yesterday and didn't even complain about the gross parts. Marcus laughed despite himself. You noticed that, huh? I notice everything. Maya looked up at him with Angela's eyes. Mommy always said we should give people chances. She said that's how broken things get fixed. The words hung in the air. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed. One dinner, and you're helping with dishes. Maya cheered. Vanessa tried to hide her surprise, but she couldn't quite keep the emotion off her face. They drove in separate cars to a small house in a modest neighborhood. The paint was peeling slightly, the yard needed work, but there were flowers in the window box and a welcome mat at the door. Inside, Vanessa met Dorothy. Marcus's mother shook her hand firmly, looked her directly in the eye, and said nothing. The silence spoke volumes. Grandma, this is Miss Vanessa. She cleans the bathrooms. Dorothy's eyebrow rose. Does she now? Without complaining, Maya added. Even the gross parts. Something flickered in Dorothy's expression. Not warmth exactly, but the beginning of respect. Dinner was simple pot roast vegetables, fresh bread. Vanessa couldn't remember the last time she'd eaten a home-cooked meal. Her family had staff for that. Restaurants for occasions. Nobody cooked. The conversation was awkward at first. Dorothy asked pointed questions about Vanessa's upbringing, her education, her plans. Vanessa answered honestly, even when the honesty was painful. My father raised me to be an accessory, something to display at parties and use for business connections. I never learned how to be a person. Dorothy set down her fork. And you think cleaning bathrooms is going to teach you? I don't know. But it's better than what I was doing before, which was being cruel to strangers because I was empty inside, hurting people to feel powerful, living a life that looked perfect and felt like prison. The table was silent. Maya broke the tension. I think she's doing good, Grandma. She helped me tie my shoes yesterday when Daddy was busy, and she knows all the words to the songs from Frozen. Despite herself, Dorothy laughed. Well, if she knows Frozen, I suppose she can stay for dessert. After dinner, Maya dragged Vanessa to her room to show her the stuffed elephant, the drawings on the walls, and the framed photograph on the nightstand. That's my mommy, Maya said softly. She's in heaven now. Vanessa looked at the picture, a beautiful woman with kind eyes and a warm smile holding baby Maya in her arms. She was beautiful. Daddy says I look like her. You do. Maya sat on her bed, legs dangling. Do you have a mommy? I do, but we're not very close. Why not? Vanessa considered how to answer. She's busy, and I was always busy. We forgot how to talk to each other. That's sad. Maya patted the bed beside her. You should practice. Talking is important. That's what Daddy says. Vanessa sat down. This 8-year-old girl who had lost her mother was offering comfort to a grown woman who had everything and nothing. You're very wise, Maya. Daddy says Mommy gave me that, the wisdom. She picked up her elephant and hugged it. I miss her. I know you do. But Daddy says she's still with us, every time we dance, every time we love each other. Mommy's right there. Vanessa felt tears threatening. She blinked them back. Your daddy is a good man. The best. Maya looked at her with those clear, honest eyes. Are you going to stay Miss Vanessa at the center? I want to. Good, because I think you're broken, but the good kind of broken. The kind that can be fixed if you try hard enough. Vanessa didn't trust herself to speak. She just nodded. Later, after Maya was in bed, Vanessa sat on the porch with Marcus. Dorothy had retreated inside, leaving them alone with the night air and the distant sound of traffic. Thank you for dinner. Thank Maya. She's the one who insisted. She's incredible. She's her mother's daughter. Marcus stared at the stars. Angela would have liked you. The new you, anyway. She always believed people could change. You don't. I'm learning to. He turned to look at her. What happened at the gala, it broke something in both of us. I lost my job, but I found something I'd been missing for 3 years. You lost your reputation, but maybe you'll find something too. What did you find? Myself. The man I used to be before grief and survival turned me into a ghost. Vanessa nodded slowly. I never had a self to find. I was always just performing, being what other people wanted. I don't know who I am without the money, the clothes, the name. Then this is your chance to find out. They sat in comfortable silence. For the first time, there was no tension between them. No history of cruelty and humiliation hanging in the air. Just two people who had somehow ended up in each other's lives trying to figure out what that meant. Vanessa's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and frowned. My father. He's been calling all day. You should answer eventually. I know. She put the phone away. But not tonight. Tonight I want to stay in this feeling a little longer. What feeling? Like I might actually become someone worth being. Marcus stood and extended his hand. The same gesture he'd made in the ballroom the night everything changed. Come back to the center tomorrow. The kids are performing their first routine for the parents. They'd want you there. Vanessa took his hand and stood. I wouldn't miss it. She drove home that night through streets she'd never noticed before, past houses she'd never seen, through a city that suddenly felt alive in ways her penthouse never had. She didn't know what was coming next. Didn't know if she could really change, if the old Vanessa would resurface, if her father would find a way to drag her back into the gilded cage. But for the first time in her life, she had something to wake up for. And that was everything. The morning of the performance arrived with a tension Marcus could feel in his bones. Parents and family members had been filing into St. Mary's since dawn, filling the small hall with bodies and noise and expectation. Folding chairs had been borrowed from the church next door, arranged in uneven rows facing the scuffed floor that had become a stage. Father Thomas moved through the crowd, shaking hands, offering reassurance, doing what priests do best, making people feel like everything would be okay. Marcus stood backstage with the children. Their energy was electric, nervous, barely contained. Aaliyah kept adjusting her hair. Two of the younger boys were practicing their steps in the corner, bumping into each other. Maya held her father's hand, squeezing tight. "Daddy, what if I forget the moves? Then you make new ones." "What if people laugh?" Marcus knelt down to her level. "Baby, listen to me. When your mama and I used to perform, I was terrified every single time. My hands would shake. My stomach would flip. I'd forget the steps 5 seconds before going on stage." Maya's eyes widened. "Really? Really? But your mama taught me something. She said the fear doesn't go away. You just learn to dance with it. You let it push you instead of hold you back." "Did it work?" "Every time." He kissed her forehead. "You're going to be amazing. I believe in you." She hugged him tight. Her small arms wrapped around his neck like she was holding on to the whole world. Vanessa appeared at the edge of the backstage area looking uncertain. She'd arrived early to help set up chairs and had stayed to organize the refreshments table. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, her clothes practical, her face free of makeup. She looked nothing like the woman from the ballroom. She looked like someone trying very hard to belong. "The parents are seated," she said quietly. "Father Thomas wants to know if you're ready." Marcus stood up. 5 minutes. He gathered the children in a circle. 12 faces looked up at him, some excited, some terrified, all trusting. "Listen to me. What we've been working on these past weeks isn't just dancing. It's telling a story. Your story. Where you come from, what you've been through, what you're going to become." He looked at each of them in turn. "When you get out there, I don't want you to think about being perfect. I want you to think about being real. The audience isn't here to judge you. They're here to see you, really see you, maybe for the first time." "What if we mess up?" one of the younger kids asked. "Then you keep going. You don't stop. You don't apologize. You just find the beat again and keep moving. That's what life is, falling down and finding the beat again." He put his hand in the center of the circle. "Together." 12 small hands stacked on top of his. "Together." The music started. Marcus walked to the side of the stage area and stood next to Vanessa. The children took their positions, their faces transforming from nervous kids to performers in the span of a breath, and then they danced. It wasn't perfect. Aaliyah missed a transition. One of the boys stumbled on a turn. The timing wasn't always synchronized, and there was a moment where everyone seemed to forget what came next. But it was real, raw, honest. These weren't polished performers executing choreography. They were children expressing joy, expressing struggle, expressing the simple human need to be seen. The audience leaned forward. Parents who had looked skeptical at first now had tears in their eyes. A grandmother in the front row pressed her hand to her heart. A father who had arrived with arms crossed slowly unfolded them, his expression shifting from doubt to wonder. And then Marcus noticed Deshaun. The boy had been positioned at the back where he couldn't be seen. That was the agreement: he would stand with the group, but wouldn't have to perform. He'd been too afraid, too convinced that dancing was something other people did. But somewhere in the middle of the routine, Deshaun started moving. Not the choreographed steps. Something else. Something that came from inside him. His body swayed. His feet found rhythm. His arms began telling a story no one had taught him. Marcus's breath caught. Deshaun wasn't hiding anymore. He was dancing, really dancing in front of everyone. His face was focused, intense, alive. The other children noticed and made room for him, adapting their movements to include him, welcoming him into the story they were telling together. When the music ended, the silence lasted only a heartbeat. Then the room exploded. Parents rose to their feet, applauding, cheering, some of them crying openly. The children stood frozen for a moment, not quite believing what was happening. Then Maya broke into a huge grin, and the others followed, their faces bright with pride and disbelief. Father Thomas moved to the front of the room, his voice cutting through the noise. "Ladies and gentlemen, these children have been working for weeks with a man who believed in them when nobody else did. A man who knows what it means to be overlooked, underestimated, and dismissed. Please welcome Marcus Johnson." More applause. Marcus stepped forward, reluctantly, uncomfortable with the attention. "I don't need recognition," he said when the clapping died down. "These kids are the ones who did the work. I just showed them what was already inside them." A parent in the back raised her hand. "Mr. Johnson, we've all seen the video. We know what happened to you. How are you planning to keep this program running?" The question hit the heart of Marcus's deepest fear. The truth was, he had no idea. His savings were almost gone. Father Thomas couldn't pay him much. The community center was barely scraping by as it was. Before he could answer, a voice came from the back of the room. "He's not." Everyone turned. Richard Cole stood in the doorway. He was dressed in a suit that cost more than everything in the room, combined, flanked by two men who looked like lawyers. His face was a mask of cold authority. Marcus felt his stomach drop. "Daddy!" Vanessa's voice was small, frightened. Richard walked forward, each step deliberate, echoing off the worn floor. The crowd parted for him instinctively, the way people always parted for money and power. "This program is operating without proper permits. The building isn't up to code. There are liability issues that could expose the church to significant legal action." He stopped in front of Marcus. "I could have this place shut down by tomorrow." "Richard." Father Thomas stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "These children have done nothing wrong. I'm not here about the children. I'm here about my daughter." Richard's eyes found Vanessa in the crowd. "You've been hiding here for weeks, ignoring my calls, abandoning your responsibilities. Do you have any idea what you've done to our family's reputation?" "I've been helping people." Vanessa's voice shook, but she didn't look away. "For the first time in my life, I've been doing something that matters." "Helping people." Richard laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "You've been scrubbing toilets and serving snacks to children whose parents can't even afford to pay for piano lessons. This isn't help. This is a tantrum, a phase, a cry for attention." "It's not a phase." "Then what is it?" Vanessa stepped forward, her hands trembling but her chin lifted. "It's me figuring out who I am. Without your money, without your expectations, without the prison you built around me since the day I was born." Richard's face reddened. "Prison, I gave you everything. You gave me things. You never gave me you." Tears streamed down her face. "You never asked me what I wanted, never asked who I wanted to be. You just told me what to wear, who to know, how to perform. I was a prop in your life, an accessory." "You were my daughter." "No, I was your brand." The room was silent. Nobody moved. Even the children had gone quiet, sensing something important happening that they didn't fully understand. Richard's jaw tightened. "If you stay here, you're no longer my daughter. I'll cut you off. Completely. No money, no apartment, no trust fund, nothing." Marcus watched Vanessa's face. Watched the war playing out behind her eyes. The fear, the uncertainty, the weight of a lifetime of conditioning pulling against the fragile new identity she was trying to build. "Then I'll have nothing," she said quietly. "That's right. Nothing." Vanessa was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked at Marcus, at Maya. at the children who had just performed their hearts out for a room full of people who loved them. "Then I'll have nothing," she repeated. "And it will be more than I've ever had before." Richard's face twisted. For a moment, Marcus thought he might say something cruel might unleash the full force of his anger. Instead, he turned to Marcus. "This is your doing. You poisoned her mind. You turned my daughter against me." "I didn't turn her against anyone. She made her own choice." "She's a child. She doesn't know what she wants." "She's 26 years old, and she knows exactly what she doesn't want, which is to be you." Richard stepped closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "I destroyed you once. I can do it again. I can make sure no one in this city ever hires you. I can make your life so difficult you'll wish you'd never been born." Marcus didn't flinch. "You already did your worst. You fired me for having dignity, for refusing to let your daughter humiliate me without consequence." He met Richard's eyes. "But here's what you don't understand. You didn't destroy me. You freed me. That night at the gala when I danced, I found something I'd lost for 3 years. And all your money, all your power, all your lawyers and threats, you can't take that away. Because it's mine. It's always been mine." Richard's face went pale with rage. He opened his mouth to respond, but Father Thomas stepped between them. "That's enough." The priest's voice carried an authority that had nothing to do with money or status. "Mr. Cole, this is a house of God. You're welcome here, but only if you come in peace. If you're here to threaten and intimidate, I'll have to ask you to leave." "You'll regret this," Richard said, looking around the room. "All of you. You think you're helping these people? You're just delaying the inevitable. The world doesn't reward dreamers. It crushes them." He turned and walked toward the door. At the threshold, he stopped. "Vanessa, last chance. Come with me now and we'll forget this ever happened." Vanessa looked at her father, the man who had given her everything except what she needed most. "Goodbye, Daddy." Richard's face hardened. He walked out without another word, his lawyers trailing behind him. The door closed. Nobody spoke. Then Maya's small voice cut through the silence. "Miss Vanessa. Are you okay?" Vanessa looked down at the little girl who had lost her mother and still found ways to smile, to dance, to believe in good things. "I think I'm going to be." She knelt down and Maya threw her arms around her. Other children joined in a pile of small bodies, surrounding the woman who had once mocked their teacher, offering comfort they didn't fully understand was needed. Marcus watched from the side, something shifting in his chest. He'd spent years building walls around his heart. Walls to protect himself from loss, from hope, from the vulnerability of caring too much. But walls also kept good things out. After the crowd dispersed and the chairs were folded and the refreshments were put away, Marcus found Vanessa sitting alone in the empty hall. She was staring at her phone blank screen. No messages, no lifeline to the world she'd just left behind. "He meant it," she said without looking up. "He'll cut me off. By tonight my credit cards will be canceled. The apartment will be locked. I'll have nothing." "You have a job." She laughed bitterly. "A volunteer position at a community center that can barely afford to keep the lights on." "Then we'll figure something out." Marcus sat down beside her. "I've been broke my whole life. It's not fun, but it's survivable." "I've never been broke. I've never been anything." "Then this is your chance to find out what you're made of." Vanessa finally looked at him. Her eyes were red from crying, but something in them had changed. The fear was still there, but so was something else. Something that looked almost like peace. "Why are you being kind to me, after everything I did?" "Because I know what it feels like to be lost, to have your identity stripped away until you don't recognize yourself." He paused. "When Angela died, I wanted to die too. I had a daughter to raise, and all I could think about was how I couldn't do it alone, how I wasn't strong enough, how the best part of me was buried in the ground with her. What changed? Maya. Every morning she woke up needing me. Needing breakfast, needing help with her shoes, needing someone to tell her everything would be okay. I didn't have time to fall apart because she needed me to hold together. He looked at Vanessa. Maybe that's what you need, something to hold together for. The kids, the center, yourself. He stood up and offered her his hand. Come on, Dorothy's making dinner. You look like you could use a home-cooked meal. Vanessa took his hand and stood. Won't she be suspicious? Me showing up 2 nights in a row? Probably. But she makes too much food anyway. Says it's from growing up poor, she never learned how to cook for less than 10 people. They walked out together into the fading afternoon light. At Marcus's house, Dorothy was already in the kitchen when they arrived. She took one look at Vanessa's face and understood without being told. Set another place at the table, Maya. Yes, Grandma. Dinner was quieter than the night before. Vanessa didn't say much, just ate slowly, savoring each bite like she was memorizing the taste of normalcy. Maya chatted about the performance, about Deshawn's surprise dance, about how she wanted to learn more moves so she could be even better next time. After dinner, Dorothy took Vanessa aside. I heard what happened, at the center. Word travels fast. Small community. Everybody knows everybody's business. Dorothy studied her with those sharp, knowing eyes. You walked away from everything, your family, your money, your whole life. I did. Why? Vanessa was quiet for a moment. Because I looked at your son and your granddaughter and saw something I've never had. Something real. Something that doesn't depend on bank accounts or last names or what other people think. She met Dorothy's gaze. I don't know if I can build that for myself, but I want to try. Dorothy nodded slowly. My son lost his wife 3 years ago. Nearly lost himself too. I watched him shrink day by day, becoming smaller and smaller until I was afraid he'd disappear completely. She paused. Then you threw his broom across that ballroom floor. And somehow that was the thing that brought him back. I don't think I can take credit for that. Maybe not credit, but responsibility. Dorothy's voice softened. You started something that night. Something that changed both of you. Now you have to see it through. How do I do that? One day at a time, one choice at a time, one act of kindness, one moment of courage, one decision to show up even when it's hard. Dorothy put her hand on Vanessa's shoulder. You hurt my son, but you're also helping him heal. I don't know how to feel about that yet, but I'm willing to watch and see what happens. It was the closest thing to acceptance Vanessa had received. She took it and held it close. That night Vanessa slept on the couch. In the morning she woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of Maya's laughter. She lay there for a moment, listening to the noises of a household, waking up, footsteps, running water, the clink of dishes, a radio playing somewhere in the background. This was what normal felt like. She'd never known. Over the next week, Vanessa worked harder than she'd ever worked in her life. She arrived at St. Mary's before dawn and stayed after sunset. She cleaned, organized painted walls that needed painting, fixed chairs that wobbled. She learned the children's names, their stories, their dreams. She listened when they needed someone to listen and stayed quiet when they needed space. And slowly, something began to change. The children stopped looking at her with suspicion. The parents nodded at her when they came to pick up their kids. Father Thomas started including her in planning meetings. Even Deshawn, the boy who had been so reluctant to dance, started talking to her about his father, about the pressure he felt to be tough, about how dancing made him feel free. My dad would be mad if he knew, Deshawn confided one afternoon. Why? He says men don't dance, says it's soft. Vanessa thought about her own father, about the boxes they'd both been forced into. My dad said a lot of things too. Took me a long time to realize that just because someone says something doesn't make it true. But he's my dad. I know, and you love him. That's okay. You can love someone, and still disagree with them. You can respect them and still find your own path. Deshawn was quiet. Then, Mr. Marcus says the same thing. He's a smart man. Yeah. Deshawn kicked at the ground. I want to be like him when I grow up, not scared to be myself. I think you're already on your way. That evening, Marcus found Vanessa in the hall, teaching Aaliyah a new step. He watched from the doorway, not interrupting, just observing the woman she was becoming. When Aaliyah left, Vanessa turned and saw him. How long have you been standing there? Long enough. He walked toward her. You're good with them. I'm trying. Trying is more than most people do. He stopped a few feet away. I got a call today. A reporter from the Tribune. They want to do a story about the center, about the kids, about what we're building here. That's wonderful. They also want to talk to you. The heiress who walked away from everything to scrub toilets at a community center. That's the kind of story people eat up. Vanessa frowned. I don't want to be the story. The kids should be the story. I told them the same thing, but they said if you're involved, they'll give us front-page coverage. If not, it's a small feature in the lifestyle section. The weight of the choice settled on her shoulders. If she agreed, she'd be thrust back into the spotlight, the world she'd just escaped. Every detail of her fall from grace would be examined, discussed, judged. But it would also bring attention to the center, to the kids, to the work Marcus was doing. Okay, she said quietly. You sure? No, but if it helps the children, I'll do it. Marcus nodded. Thank you. He turned to leave, then stopped. Vanessa. Yeah. You've changed. I wasn't sure if it would last. If you'd wake up one morning and run back to your old life. He met her eyes. But you haven't. You've shown up every day. You've done the work. You've let these kids into your heart. I didn't have much choice. They're impossible not to love. They are. He paused. And so are you, when you're being real. He left before she could respond. Vanessa stood alone in the empty hall, his words echoing in the silence. She looked at her reflection in the cracked mirrors. Tired eyes, messy hair, clothes that smelled like cleaning solution, and children's sweat. She'd never looked worse. She'd never felt more beautiful. That night, lying on the couch in Marcus's living room, Vanessa allowed herself to imagine a future. Not the future her father had planned: galas and charity boards and strategic marriages. A different future. One with purpose, with meaning, with people who saw her for who she was, not what she could do for them. It was terrifying. It was also the first time she'd felt truly alive. Somewhere in the darkness, she heard Maya talking in her sleep. Fragments of dreams, whispered words, the soft murmur of a child processing her day. Mommy, Maya mumbled. Mommy, look, I'm dancing. Vanessa closed her eyes and let the tears fall silently. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. She didn't know if Richard would follow through on his threats, if the article would help or hurt, if she would ever figure out who she was supposed to be. But she knew she wasn't alone anymore. And that was enough to keep going. The Tribune article came out on a Sunday morning. Marcus woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. His mother was already at the kitchen table, newspaper spread out in front of her, reading glasses perched on her nose. You made the front page. He walked over and looked down at the headline. From ballroom floor to community hero, the janitor who danced his way back to life. Below it, a photograph of Marcus surrounded by the children of St. Mary's. They were all smiling. Even Deshawn, who stood in the back but no longer hid his face. Dorothy looked up at him. They wrote about Angela. Marcus stiffened. What did they say? That she was a champion dancer. That you two won nationals together. That she died of cancer 3 years ago and you gave up everything to raise Maya alone. Dorothy's voice softened. They said you stopped dancing the day she died. Until that night at the gala. Marcus sat down heavily. He hadn't told the reporter about Angela. Someone must have dug into his past, found the old articles, the competition photos, the obituary. "Is that okay?" Dorothy asked. "That people know." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Angela always said our story should be told. She said it might help someone else, someone who was grieving, someone who had forgotten how to live. She was a wise woman. The wisest." Maya came running into the kitchen, still in her pajamas. "Daddy! Daddy! We're in the newspaper. I saw it on Miss Vanessa's phone." Marcus caught her as she launched herself at him. "I know, baby. I saw. Are we famous now?" "I don't know about famous, but people know about the center, about what we're doing there." "Does that mean more kids will come to dance?" "I hope so." Maya's face grew serious as an 8-year-old could manage. "Daddy, the newspaper said Mommy was a dancer too. Like you." "She was. The best I ever knew." "Do you think she's proud of what we're doing?" Marcus pulled his daughter close. "I think she's smiling down at us right now. I think she's dancing up there in heaven, showing all the angels how it's done." Maya giggled. "Angels can't dance as good as Mommy." "Nobody can, baby. Nobody can." The response to the article was immediate and overwhelming. By Monday afternoon, the center's phone was ringing non-stop. Parents wanting to enroll their children. Community organizations offering support. Local businesses asking how they could help. Even a few celebrities had shared the article on social media, amplifying the story to millions of people. Father Thomas stood in his office, overwhelmed. "I've never seen anything like this. We've gotten more donations in 24 hours than we received all of last year." Marcus was still processing it all. "What do we do with it?" "We build. We grow. We help more children." The priest smiled. "God works in mysterious ways, Marcus. Sometimes he uses a ballroom dance to start a revolution." That evening, Vanessa found Marcus alone in the empty hall. He was standing in the center of the floor, staring at his reflection in the cracked mirrors. "You okay?" "Just thinking. About how strange life is. 2 months ago I was invisible, a janitor nobody saw. Now I'm on the front page of the Tribune, and people are calling me a hero." "You are a hero." "No." He turned to face her. "I'm just a man who refused to be erased. The real heroes are those kids. They show up every day, work harder than anyone I know, and believe in themselves, even when the world tells them they shouldn't." Vanessa walked toward him slowly. "The article mentioned me too." "I know. I'm sorry if that was uncomfortable." "It wasn't." She stopped a few feet away. "They called me the heiress who chose humanity over privilege. Nobody's ever described me that way before. It felt right. Because it is right. You made a choice that cost you everything. That takes courage. I had help." She met his eyes. "I had you. Maya, Dorothy, Father Thomas, the kids. I had people who showed me what real life looks like." Marcus was quiet. Something had been building between them for weeks, a connection neither of them had named or acknowledged. It lived in the glances that lasted too long, the accidental touches, the conversations that went deeper than either intended. "Vanessa, I need to tell you something." "Okay." "When Angela died, I thought my heart was finished. I thought I'd used up all my love, spent it all on her, and there was nothing left for anyone else." He paused, the words difficult. "But these past weeks, watching you change, watching you become someone real, I've started to feel things I didn't think I could feel anymore." Vanessa's breath caught. "Marcus?" "I'm not saying this to pressure you. I'm not saying I know what it means or where it goes. I just needed you to know that you matter to me. Not as the woman who threw my broom. Not as the director's daughter. As Vanessa. Just Vanessa." She stepped closer, close enough that he could see the tears forming in her eyes. "I've never been just Vanessa to anyone. My whole life I was a name, a bank account, a pedigree. Nobody ever saw me. I see you. I know. Her voice broke. That's what terrifies me. They stood there in the silence, inches apart, the weight of everything they'd been through pressing against the space between them. Then Marcus reached out and took her hand. Not the way he'd taken it at the gala that had been a challenge, a statement, a defiance. This was different. This was gentle, an offering. I'm not asking for anything. I'm not expecting anything. I'm just saying that whatever happens next, you're not alone. You have a place here. With us. With me. Vanessa squeezed his hand. That's all I've ever wanted. A place where I belong. The moment stretched fragile and precious. Then Maya's voice echoed from the doorway. Daddy. Miss Vanessa, Grandma says dinner's ready, and if you don't come now, she's giving your portions to the dog. We don't have a dog, Marcus called back. Grandma says she'll get one just to make her point. They both laughed, a release of tension, a return to reality. But as they walked toward the door, their hands remained intertwined. It was a beginning. Small. Uncertain. But real. The days that followed were a whirlwind. The donations kept coming. A local construction company offered to renovate the community center for free. A dance supply store donated shoes, outfits, and equipment. A music school sent instructors to help with classes. What had started as a scrappy program in a rundown hall was becoming something bigger, something that mattered. Marcus hired 2 assistant instructors, young dancers from the neighborhood who needed jobs and had talent to spare. He expanded the program to include not just children, but teenagers and adults. Saturday classes became so popular, they had to turn people away. Through it all, Vanessa was by his side. She handled logistics, managed volunteers, dealt with the media requests that kept pouring in. She discovered she had a talent for organization, for making things run smoothly, for solving problems before they became crises. One afternoon, Father Thomas pulled her aside. You've found your calling. Vanessa looked around at the bustling center, children, laughing, music playing, people moving with purpose and joy. I never thought I'd say this, but I think you're right. The Lord has a way of putting us exactly where we need to be, even when we fight it. I wasn't exactly cooperative with his plan. Few of us are. The priest smiled. But you're here now. That's what matters. 3 weeks after the article, Richard Cole made his move. Marcus arrived at the center to find a legal notice taped to the front door. He read it twice, his stomach sinking with each word. Cease and desist. Building code violations. Zoning issues. A demand that the center shut down immediately pending a full inspection. Father Thomas appeared beside him. He's been making calls, pressuring the city inspectors, calling in favors from politicians who owe him. Can he actually shut us down? Legally. Maybe temporarily. He has enough connections to make our lives very difficult. The priest's jaw tightened. But we're not giving up. This community needs us. These children need us. Vanessa read the notice over Marcus's shoulder. Her face went pale. This is my fault. He's doing this because of me. He's doing this because he's a petty man who can't stand losing control. Marcus crumpled the paper. We'll fight it. How? He has lawyers. He has money. He has power. We have something better. What? Marcus looked at the children gathering inside, peering through the windows, their faces worried. He looked at the parents arriving for pickup, stopping to read the notice with confusion and alarm. He looked at Father Thomas standing tall, despite the threat. We have the truth. We have people who believe in what we're doing. And we have a story that millions of people have already heard. That night, Marcus made a video. He sat in the center's main hall, Maya beside him, the children gathered behind them. He spoke directly to the camera, his voice steady. My name is Marcus Johnson. 2 months ago, I was a janitor who got fired for dancing. Today, I run a community center that serves hundreds of children who have nowhere else to go. And tomorrow, a wealthy man is trying to shut us down, not because we've done anything wrong, but because his daughter chose to help us instead of living the empty life he planned for her." He paused, letting the words sink in. Richard Cole is using his money and his connections to destroy something beautiful. He's using building codes and zoning laws as weapons against children who just want to learn to dance. He's trying to punish his own daughter by punishing the people she cares about. Maya looked up at him, her small hand finding his. "I'm not asking for money. I'm not asking for donations. I'm asking for witnesses. I'm asking everyone who sees this to pay attention, to watch what happens next, to hold Richard Cole accountable for what he's doing." He leaned toward the camera. "Because the thing about darkness is, it can't survive in the light, and we're not going to let him operate in the shadows anymore." The video went viral overnight. By morning, it had been viewed 12 million times. News stations picked up the story. Politicians who had been quietly helping Richard Cole suddenly distanced themselves. The city inspector, who had been pressured to shut down the center, announced publicly that he had found no significant violations and would not be recommending closure. Richard Cole's name became synonymous with pettiness and cruelty. His business partners started asking uncomfortable questions. His board members requested emergency meetings. The empire he had spent decades building began to show cracks. 4 days after the video, Vanessa's phone rang. She almost didn't answer. The number was her father's. She'd been ignoring his calls for weeks, but something made her pick up. "Vanessa." His voice sounded different, tired, old. "Daddy, I need to see you. In person. Can you come to the house?" "Why?" "Because I made a mistake. Several mistakes, and I need to apologize." Vanessa didn't believe him, not entirely, but she agreed to meet. Marcus drove her to the Cole Mansion, a sprawling estate on the outskirts of the city that had been in the family for 3 generations. She hadn't been back since the night she'd walked away. "You want me to come in with you?" "No. This is something I need to do alone." "I'll be right here." She squeezed his hand and walked up the long driveway. Richard Cole was waiting in the study. He looked diminished, somehow smaller than she remembered, older than he should have been. The arrogance that had always surrounded him like armor was gone. "Thank you for coming." "What do you want?" He gestured to a chair. She didn't sit. "I've spent the last week watching my life fall apart. Business partners distancing themselves. Friends refusing my calls. My own board questioning whether I should step down." He laughed bitterly. "All because I couldn't let go. Couldn't accept that you'd chosen something different. You tried to destroy a community center full of children. I know. You tried to punish innocent people because you were angry at me. I know. Why?" Richard was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Because I was afraid. Your mother left when you were 3. Did you know that she didn't die like I told people? She just left. Said she couldn't handle the pressure of being a Cole. Said I had turned her into something she didn't recognize." Vanessa felt the ground shift beneath her. "You told me she died in a car accident." "I lied. I lied to everyone. Because the truth was too painful, that I wasn't enough, that the life I built wasn't enough." He looked at her with eyes full of regret. "When you started pulling away, when you started choosing that center over everything I'd given you, I felt her leaving all over again. And I couldn't handle it. So you tried to destroy them. I tried to force you to come back. The only way I knew how, with power, with threats, with control." He shook his head. "I didn't realize until this week that those were the same things that drove your mother away." Vanessa stood frozen, decades of lies collapsing around her. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," Richard continued. "I haven't earned that. I probably never will. But I wanted you to know that I've called off the lawyers. The center is safe. I've made a donation anonymously to cover their operating costs for the next 5 years." "Why anonymously?" Because if my name is attached, it will taint everything. People will think I'm trying to buy redemption. Maybe I am. He stood slowly, like a man carrying enormous weight. I was wrong, Vanessa. About you. About that janitor. About what matters in life. I spent 60 years building an empire, and I forgot to build a family. Vanessa felt tears streaming down her face. Tears of anger, of grief, of something that might eventually become forgiveness. I don't know if I can ever have a relationship with you again. I understand. But I'm willing to try. Slowly. On my terms. Richard nodded. That's more than I deserve. They stood there, father and daughter, separated by a lifetime of mistakes and the fragile possibility of something new. The janitor, Richard said finally. Marcus. He loves you. I saw it in the video. I know. Does he make you happy? Vanessa thought about the past weeks. The early mornings, the children's laughter, the meals at Dorothy's table, the feeling of belonging somewhere for the first time in her life. He makes me real. Richard almost smiled. Your mother said something like that once, when we first met. She said I made her feel real. The smile faded. I should have spent our marriage keeping that feeling alive instead of burying it under expectations. Vanessa walked to the door. Then she stopped. Daddy? Yes. Mom? Is she still alive? Richard's face crumpled. I don't know. I haven't tried to find her in 20 years. I was too proud. Too ashamed. Maybe it's time. She left him standing alone in the study that had once been the center of his empire. Outside, Marcus was waiting. He saw her face and opened his arms. She fell into them, sobbing against his chest, releasing years of pain and confusion and false memories. He lied to me, she choked out. My whole life, about everything. I know. How do I move forward from this? Marcus held her tighter. The same way you've been doing it. One day at a time, one choice at a time, one moment of courage after another. They stayed like that until her tears ran dry. Then he drove her home, not to the mansion, not to the penthouse, but to the small house with peeling paint and flowers in the window box. Dorothy met them at the door. She took one look at Vanessa and pulled her into a hug. Whatever happened, you're home now. That's all that matters. 6 months later, the community center held its first annual showcase. The hall had been transformed. New floors, new mirrors, new sound system. The walls were covered with photographs, the children, the classes, the journey from rundown building to thriving hub. 300 people packed the room. Parents, donors, community members, reporters. Even the mayor came eager to associate herself with the feel-good story that had captured the city's heart. Marcus stood backstage with his dancers. There were 40 of them now. Children ranging from 5 to 17, all of them transformed by months of hard work and belief. Maya stood at the front, no longer nervous. She had grown into her role as Marcus's daughter, as a leader among the children, as a young woman who carried her mother's grace in every movement. Deshaun stood beside her. The boy who had refused to dance now helped teach the younger kids. His father had come around eventually, showed up one day to watch a class, saw his son moving with confidence and joy, and broke down crying in the hallway. They were working on their relationship now, slowly, imperfectly, but moving forward. You ready? Marcus asked. The children nodded. 40 faces filled with determination and pride. Remember what we talked about. This isn't about being perfect. It's about being real. It's about showing everyone who you are and what you're capable of. We got this, Mr. Marcus, Aaliyah said. I know you do. The lights dimmed. The crowd quieted. Marcus walked to the center of the floor and took the microphone. Thank you all for being here tonight. When I started this program, I had nothing. No money. No support. Just a borrowed hall and a belief that every child deserves to be seen. He looked out at the audience at Father Thomas, who had given him a chance when no one else would. At Dorothy, who had held his family together through the darkest times. At Vanessa, who sat in the front row, no longer hiding, no longer ashamed. I was a janitor. Some people thought that made me less than, invisible, unworthy. But the thing about being invisible is you see everything. You see how people treat each other when they think no one's watching. You see who's kind and who's cruel. You see the difference between people who have everything and feel nothing and people who have nothing and feel everything. He paused. These children have taught me more about courage than anyone I've ever known. They come from hard places. They face challenges most adults couldn't handle. But every day they show up, they work, they grow. They refuse to let the world define them. He stepped aside, gesturing to the curtain. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the St. Mary's Community Dance Company. The music began, and the children danced. They moved as one body, one heart, one unstoppable force of joy and determination. The choreography was complex months of work distilled into a single performance, but they executed it with precision that belied their youth. Maya took center stage for a solo, and Marcus felt Angela's presence so strongly it took his breath away. Their daughter moved with the same grace, the same fire, the same absolute commitment to the moment. When the solo ended, Deshawn stepped forward. His section was different, rawer, more emotional, telling the story of a boy who had been afraid to move and had found freedom in the beat. The audience was transfixed. The finale brought all 40 children together in a sequence that built and built faster and more complex until it seemed impossible that they could maintain the pace. But they did. They rose to the challenge, pushed beyond their limits, became something greater than the sum of their parts. The last beat hit. The children froze in their final positions. Silence. Then the room exploded. Standing ovation. Cheers. Tears. Parents rushing forward to embrace their children. Donors writing checks on the spot. Reporters scrambling for interviews. In the midst of it all, Marcus found Vanessa. She was crying, but smiling, the kind of tears that come from watching something beautiful be born. They were incredible, she said. They were. But they're not the only ones who've transformed. He took her hands. Around them, chaos reigned, children celebrating, parents weeping, the whole room alive with energy. But in that moment, it was just the two of them. A year ago, I was sweeping floors and trying not to exist. You were throwing brooms and trying not to feel. Now look at us. Look at us, she echoed. I love you, Vanessa. Not because you're different from who you were, but because you had the courage to become who you always could have been. She squeezed his hands. I love you too. For seeing me when I couldn't see myself. For giving me a chance when I didn't deserve one. For showing me that it's never too late to start over. He pulled her close. It's not starting over. It's becoming. Becoming what? Whatever we choose. That's the point. We get to decide now. Not our pasts. Not other people's expectations. Just us. Maya appeared beside them, her face flushed with triumph. Daddy, Miss Vanessa, did you see us? Marcus scooped her up. I saw baby. You were amazing. Mommy was watching too. I felt her. So did I. Maya looked between her father and Vanessa with the knowing eyes of a child who understood more than adults gave her credit for. Miss Vanessa, are you going to be my family now? Like for real? Vanessa looked at Marcus. He nodded, his eyes full. If you'll have me. Maya threw her arms around Vanessa's neck. I'll have you. Grandma will too. And Daddy already does, even if he's too silly to say it right. Hey, Marcus protested. I say things right. You take forever, Daddy. That's what Grandma says. They laughed together, the three of them, bound by something stronger than blood. Later that night, after the crowd had gone and the hall was empty, Marcus stood alone in the center of the floor. The lights were dimmed, the music silent. But he could still hear the echoes of the children's performance, still feel the energy that had filled the room. He closed his eyes and began to move. Not choreography, not performance, just movement, pure and free and honest. He danced for Angela, who had taught him that love was expressed in motion. He danced for Maya, who carried her mother's light into the future. He danced for the children who had shown him that hope was a choice made daily. He danced for Vanessa, who had proven that people could change. And he danced for himself. For the man who had spent 3 years invisible, lost in grief, convinced that the best parts of him were buried in the ground. That man was gone. In his place stood someone new. Someone who had been broken and rebuilt. Someone who had been humiliated and had responded with grace. Someone who had extended his hand to an enemy and found a partner. The music played only in his head, but it was enough. When he finally stopped, Vanessa was standing in the doorway. She didn't say anything. She just walked to him and took his hand. They stood together in the empty hall, surrounded by cracked mirrors that had witnessed transformation. "What now?" she asked. "Now we live, we build, we love. We teach these kids that they matter, that their dreams matter, that where they come from doesn't determine where they're going. And us. Us." Marcus smiled, a real smile, the kind that had been missing from his face for 3 years. "We figure it out together, one day at a time, one dance at a time." He pulled her close, and they swayed gently in the silence. Outside, the city hummed with its usual noise, traffic voices, the endless rhythm of millions of lives intersecting and separating. But in this small hall, in this moment, there was only peace. Marcus thought about the night of the gala, the broom hitting the floor, the laughter, the challenge he should have walked away from. He didn't regret accepting it, not for a second, because sometimes the worst moments of our lives become the doorways to the best. Sometimes humiliation leads to liberation. Sometimes losing everything is how we find ourselves. And sometimes a single dance can change everything. The night deepened. The hall grew darker. But Marcus Johnson wasn't afraid of the dark anymore. He had found his light, and he was never letting it go.